Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Have you ever wondered why awakening sometimes feels more lonely than connected? Why personal growth can make you feel like you're drifting away from everyone around you? You'd think waking up, finally seeing things clearly, would feel like a joyful celebration. But strangely, it doesn't always feel that way. Instead, the world starts to look different. The people around you don't sound the same anymore. Conversations that once felt fun or comforting suddenly seem shallow or repetitive. You're not being judgmental, and it's not that you think you're better than anyone, but something inside you has shifted. You sit with a friend and they're talking about the same weekend plans, the same gossip, the same complaints, and even though you smile and nod, you feel like you're on a totally different wavelength. Not a different world, but a different frequency. That's something no one really warns you about. The more aware or awakened you become, the lonelier it might feel, at least in the beginning. So why does this happen? Why do people start to drain you when all you've done is grow? It's not because you're antisocial. It's not burnout. And it's definitely not because you hate people. Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychiatrist, described this feeling long before most people had words for it. He called it individuation, a deep personal and spiritual transformation that comes with unexpected emotional costs. In today's video, we'll explore why your relationships start to feel different after a spiritual awakening, why small talk can feel exhausting, and why you begin to crave deeper, more meaningful connections. We're not just going to talk about it in theory, we're going to dive into the emotional side of this journey, the inner conflict, the guilt, the grief, and the quiet rebirth that follows. So if you've ever left a gathering feeling drained, or caught yourself wondering, why does everyone feel so loud, so unaware, so distant? Stay with me. By the end of this video, you'll realize you're not crazy, you're awakening. And thankfully, Carl Jung left us clues to help us understand exactly what you're going through. Question for you: have you ever felt completely alone in a room full of people you once felt close to? Carl Jung once said that most people wear a mask, not to deceive others, but to survive. He called this mask the persona. It's the version of ourselves we create to feel accepted. We wear it at work, around our families, even with our closest friends. For a while it works. It helps us feel safe, seen and loved. But when you start to awaken, something shifts. That mask begins to crack. A small voice inside starts whispering, "There's more to you than this." You begin asking questions you never dared to ask. You stop automatically saying yes to things that no longer feel true. And as you go deeper, it becomes painfully clear many of your relationships were built around that mask, not your real self. So when that mask starts slipping off, some connections just can't survive. That's why you feel tired. Not because people are bad, but because the version of you they knew doesn't exist anymore. And here's the hard part: your nervous system is still wired to play the old role. You walk into a room and, without thinking, you shrink yourself. You try to please, entertain, agree just to avoid tension. But your soul is quietly screaming for truth, for alignment, for something real. That inner tug-of-war between your old conditioning and your new awareness. That's what drains you. It's not the people, it's the pretending that exhausts you. The truth is, spiritual awakening isn't about running away from people. It's about becoming whole, so you can connect from a place that doesn't drain your energy. And this is where Jung's idea of the shadow comes in. The word shadow might sound dark or scary, but it's not evil. It's simply the parts of ourselves we've hidden, denied, or been taught to be ashamed of. It includes our fear, our anger, our jealousy, but also our brilliance, our power, our intuition, and our bold inner no. The shadow isn't just darkness, it's the fullness of who you are, waiting to be seen in the light. And once you awaken, you don't just see your own shadow, you start to feel it in others too. Conversations that once seemed light now feel heavy with things unsaid. You hear the pain beneath people's words, the masks they wear, the roles they're stuck playing, and suddenly you realize most interactions aren't between two real people, they're between two personas, both trying to stay likable, avoid conflict, and keep the peace. But when your soul wakes up, you simply can't keep playing that game. Not because you think you're better, but because your body starts rejecting anything fake. It feels heavy, suffocating, like trying to breathe in a room with no windows. You start needing truth, like oxygen. Authenticity becomes your only nourishment. And then something powerful happens. You begin to see parts of yourself in others. That friend who always needs to be right. Maybe that was you once. That colleague constantly seeking validation. You understand them, not from judgment, but from experience. Question for you. Have you ever felt like you were pretending just to keep others comfortable, even though deep down you were craving something more real? Maybe the parts of others that irritate you are actually pointing to the parts of yourself that you're still healing. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And that can be uncomfortable because awakening reveals the truth in layers. At first, it feels like they are the problem. Then you realize you were just like them, and then it hits even deeper. You still are, in some ways, but now you're choosing awareness. And that choice alone is a sign of evolution. One of the biggest risks on the path of awakening is something called spiritual ego. That moment when you start to believe you're the awake one and everyone else is asleep. But that's not true growth. That's just another mask. Real awakening is rooted in compassion for others, for yourself, and especially for the younger version of you who needed those old patterns to survive. And here's the beautiful part. When you approach yourself with compassion, healing begins. The exhaustion lightens. You stop using your energy to protect a false identity, and instead, you start honoring who you truly are. You begin to integrate your shadow, and suddenly, you don't feel the need to distance yourself from others as much. Why? Because you're no longer fighting your own reflection in them. You can finally see people clearly, without judgment, and without losing yourself. Now, let's talk about something most people completely overlook. The role your nervous system plays in all of this. Because awakening isn't just emotional or spiritual, it's physical too. Your body is undergoing a shift, especially your nervous system, and that has real, tangible effects. If you've ever felt like you're too sensitive, too emotional, or too aware, this might change everything for you. Here's what many don't realize. For most of your life, your nervous system adapted to chaos, noise, pressure, and pretending. You got used to scanning rooms, keeping the peace, reading the energy, especially if you're an empath or a highly sensitive person. You didn't just hear people, you absorbed them. You didn't just sense moods, you felt them as if they were your own. That kind of constant emotional vigilance takes a massive toll, and now awakening amplifies all of it. Your perception becomes sharper. You start to notice subtle energy shifts, misalignments, even unconscious manipulation. Sometimes when people don't even realize they're doing it. You can feel what's left unsaid. You pick up on micro-expressions, mixed signals, and hidden tension. The problem is, your body hasn't caught up with your awareness yet. Your consciousness is evolving, but your nervous system is still reacting the old way by going into overdrive. You might feel tense, overstimulated, emotionally flooded, or just deeply tired after what seems like a normal day. This is the part most people never talk about. Awakening doesn't always feel like peaceful meditation on a mountaintop. Sometimes, it feels like trying to stay grounded in a crowded, noisy room. Even a regular conversation can feel overwhelming if your body hasn't yet learned how to regulate this new level of sensitivity. And this is where many awakened souls start to feel broken. But the truth is, you're not broken, you're just not numb anymore. You're finally feeling what's always been there, but was filtered out by years of conditioning. And yes, that can be exhausting, but it's also real, it's honest, and it's the beginning of true healing. Question for you. Have you ever mistaken your sensitivity for weakness when it might actually be your greatest strength? You're not too sensitive, you're accurately sensitive. You've simply tuned into life at its most real, unfiltered level. And here's the beautiful part. As your nervous system begins to sync with your higher awareness, the overwhelm starts to fade. The emotional spikes become gentler. You begin to discern without absorbing. You feel with people, not for them. You observe what's happening around you without taking it personally. And that's when social interaction becomes sacred again. You stop shrinking to fit in. You stop wearing emotional armor just to survive a room. You stay rooted in your own energy, and you let others be where they are, without needing to change them or protect yourself from them. So, what happens after the fatigue? What comes after the emotional exhaustion, the rebalancing, and the quiet phase of solitude? What happens when you start showing up in relationships from your true self, not from guilt, habit, or fear of being alone? Something truly liberating happens. The moment you stop performing, everything shifts. You're no longer choosing relationships based on survival. You're choosing them based on resonance. You stop people-pleasing just to keep the peace. Instead, you begin to honor your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. You stop staying just to be liked. You stay where you feel seen, heard, and valued. It's a subtle change, but it transforms your entire life. You stop seeking safety in others. Instead, you become the safety you always needed. Carl Jung believed that the goal of healing isn't to become perfect, it's to become whole. That means bringing all of you to the table, your conscious mind, your unconscious habits, your shadow, your light, your wounds, your wisdom. Everything, not to impress anyone, not to fix yourself, but to be authentic. And when you're living from that place of authenticity, your relationships naturally begin to transform. You start attracting people who speak your energetic language. People who don't drain you because they're not asking you to dim your light. People who don't project their pain onto you, but are strong enough to hold space for yours too. These are soul-aligned connections, and often they show up only after a season of solitude. That quiet season wasn't loneliness. It was necessary. It was your energy field, clearing out the noise, making space for something better. Your body, your soul, your nervous system were all recalibrating your boundaries and preparing you for real connection. So if you're in the middle of this shift, if you found yourself not relating to people the way you used to, don't panic. You're not broken. You're just not here to connect the same way anymore. You're here to relate from presence, from clarity, from truth. And that changes everything. Question for you. Have you noticed that as you grow, the way you connect with people changes too? You stop matching other people's energy just to keep the peace. Instead, your own peace becomes the guide. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth. You simply embody it. You stop saying yes out of guilt, and you start connecting out of choice. And no, this doesn't make you cold or distant. It makes you anchored. It makes your love more real, more powerful, because it's no longer filtered through fear. Yes, some people will drift away, but it's not because you're abandoning them, it's because they were only ever aligned with a version of you that no longer exists. And that's okay. Grieving those connections is part of the awakening process too, but it's not a step backward, it's a step home. Every ending becomes an invitation. And every person who stays or arrives in your life after this season, they're meeting the real you, the one underneath the persona, beyond the performance, fully present. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that tiredness you've been feeling, the disconnection, the overstimulation, the emotional fatigue, it's all part of that privilege. Because the real reward of awakening isn't set escaping people. It's reclaiming your inner space so fully, so deeply, that no one can pull you out of it again. So if you're in that strange in-between space, where you're tired of people, tired of noise, tired of pretending, trust it. It means you're waking up. And when you come out the other side, you won't just relate differently, you'll live differently. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. When was the moment you realized you just couldn't relate to certain people anymore? What did that feel like for you? And don't forget to subscribe to Beyond the Body. This is just the beginning of everything you're becoming.